All right, so we use a traffic light analogy to help explain punctuation. So when you come to a complete stop in a sentence while you're reading, you are separating two independent clauses, like we talked about last time. So we call the punctuation that separates the clauses stop punctuation. You can use a semicolon, a comma, or a period as stop punctuation. So what's a semicolon? How do I draw that?
A dot above a comma.
Yeah. What about a comma? What does that look like?
The bottom of a semicolon.
Yeah. And finally, what does period look like?
A dot.
Yeah, those are three types of stop punctuation. Each one of these indicates something different to the reader. So a period is like a red stoplight because you come to a full stop and you know the sentence is over at that point. A semicolon is like a blinking yellow light because it means you kind of come to a stop, but the second part of the sentence is still connected to that first part. And then comma is like green, even though it separates ideas in the sentence, you can keep on reading and it's still part of the same sentence. Stop punctuation can be used after an introductory idea. So in your text, take a look at that sentence. Originally influenced by punk rock bands, U2 began in the 1970s. Is the part that is originally influenced by punk rock bands, is that a dependent clause or a phrase? And tell me why you think that.
That's a dependent clause because it depends on what comes after it.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you can see from the rest of the sentence, it helps explain why the band thought that the way they did in that sentence. So, also notice that the comma follows the clause, so it kind of breaks up the sentence, but it still is all one sentence. Stop punctuation can also be used before and after unnecessary information. So commas can be used to set off unnecessary information and separate it from the main points. Look at the example on your sheet and underline the unnecessary information. Great, so what clue did you have that made you choose that piece of the sentence?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so no worries. So as I said, commas can be used to set off unnecessary information and separate it from the main points. So why might you use a comma?
To put this aside, to put the information
Absolutely,
aside.
yeah, great. It can also be used in a list. When there are 3 or more items in the list, you can also use an and before the final item. Have you ever heard of the Oxford comma?
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so that means that you list the 2 items, item, comma, so item, comma, and then you pop an and in before the 3rd item, but you still have that comma in there, and that's called an Oxford comma. The last type of punctuation we will discuss is apostrophes. So they have 2 uses to show possession and for contractions. Contractions are shortened versions of 2 words. An example of this would be can't. That combines can and not, and that's why we use can't. So tell me what the contraction would be in this sentence that I'm going to put up on the board. I'd rather not eat eggs today. So take a minute and look, and when you think you have the answer, let me know what you think the contraction would be.
It's I'd, the contraction of I would.
Perfect, yeah. I would. Great. And actually contractions, we use them all the time when we speak. We don't even realize that they are contractions. So in order to use an apostrophe for its other use, to show possession, a noun or modifier and noun must follow it. So an example of this would be the album's 4 singles all won Grammy Awards. So in this sentence, album possesses the 4 singles and the modifier is for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. So, and we're just gonna go back a little bit and talk about colons and dashes. So colons are pretty similar to a semicolon. You'll understand when you see why one is called a semicolon, because it's half of a colon. And a colon is two periods over each other. And then dashes look like this. And these are some less commonly used punctuation. And the rules are the same for both of them. They must be preceded by an independent clause. So it could be a clause like in that original sentence we looked at, which was originally influenced by punk rock bands. You could pop either a colon or a dash in there to connect it to another part of a sentence. So they must be preceded by an independent clause. And if you look at the second example in your text, two independent clauses are joined together by a dash, as they would be if there was a semicolon in the sentence. So some of these types of punctuation are actually interchangeable.